The massive alien warships appeared out of nowhere, their black metal surfaces covered with huge energy weapons that could destroy entire planets. These weren't small scout ships or peaceful exploration vessels. These were the kind of massive battle cruisers that had turned hundreds of worlds into smoking ruins across the galaxy. Admiral Thexmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger on his viewing screen. His forearms crossed behind his back as he prepared for what should be the easiest conquest of his career. Humans were a young species, barely able to travel between their own planets. They had no real weapons, no proper defenses, and certainly no experience dealing with the Corvanian Empire's military might. The Admiral had done this same routine dozens of times before. First, his fleet would appear in orbit around the target world. The primitive inhabitants would see his ships and immediately understand they were completely outmatched. Then would come the panicked radio transmissions, the desperate attempts to negotiate, the pathetic offers of surrender. Within hours, another world would bow before Corvanian superiority. But something was wrong this time. Instead of the expected fear and chaos, Earth's communication frequencies were buzzing with something the Admiral had never encountered during a conquest. The humans were laughing. Not nervous, terrified laughter, but genuine belly-deep amusement, as if they had just witnessed the funniest joke in the universe. Captain Lee Minho was working his usual shift at the Seoul space station when the alien fleet materialized outside Earth's atmosphere. He had been drinking coffee and reviewing routine cargo manifests when his sensors started screaming about massive energy signatures. But when he looked at the visual display showing the alien ships, he nearly spit his coffee across his control panel. "Oh my God, look at those ships!" he gasped, struggling to catch his breath between fits of laughter. The alien vessels were clearly designed to look threatening, with sharp angles and weapon ports arranged in what was probably meant to be an intimidating pattern. Instead, they reminded him of nothing so much as his grandmother's old kitchen, appliances from the 1980s, all black plastic and awkward proportions. Down in the communications center, Officer Park Ji-won was having a similar reaction. She had been monitoring deep space frequencies when the alien signals started coming through. The transmissions were clearly meant to be terrifying, full of dramatic music and images of destroyed worlds. But the production quality was so over the top, so melodramatic, that she couldn't help but giggle. "Someone needs to tell them their intimidation factor is about as scary as a toaster with wings," she managed to say between fits of laughter, wiping tears from her eyes as she shared the alien broadcasts with her colleagues. Word spread quickly through Earth's communication networks. Within minutes, humans across the solar system were tuning in to watch what they were already calling the most entertaining thing to happen in space since that time someone accidentally broadcast a soap opera to Mars. The alien fleet remained, motionless in space, their weapons charged and ready, while humans did something that had never happened before in the history of Corvanian conquests. They started taking pictures. Space station workers pressed their faces against viewing ports, holding up their phones to snap selfies with the alien fleet visible in the background. Asteroid miners stopped their work to get group photos with the invasion force photobombing behind them. Even the crew of Earth's deep space research vessel managed to position themselves for what they called the ultimate vacation photo. Admiral Thexmore watched his tactical displays in growing confusion. His sensors showed no military mobilization, no panic evacuations, no defensive preparations. Instead, they detected millions of small electronic devices all pointing in his fleet's direction, apparently recording everything for what humans seemed to consider some kind of entertainment broadcast. This was definitely not going according to plan. Admiral Thexmore decided it was time to get serious. The humans were clearly too primitive to understand what they were facing, so he would have to educate them properly. He pressed a series of buttons on his command console, activating what the Corvanian military called their fear induction protocols. This was their most powerful psychological weapon, a carefully crafted presentation that had broken the spirit of entire civilizations before a single shot was fired. Massive holographic projectors mounted on his fleet's hulls began broadcasting images directly into Earth's atmosphere. The displays were enormous, visible from the planet's surface even in daylight. They showed scene after scene of Corvanian military victories, burning cities on distant worlds, defeated armies laying down their weapons in surrender, entire species kneeling before Corvanian commanders, begging for mercy that rarely came. The montage was designed to demonstrate the complete futility of resistance. Every image had been carefully selected to show the overwhelming power of the Corvanian Empire. Planets reduced to ash, space fleets torn apart by superior firepower, the final moments of civilizations that had dared to oppose them. The message was clear. Resistance was not just useless, it was guaranteed to result in total destruction. This presentation had never failed, not once. The Admiral had used it on gas-breathing methane dwellers, silicon-based rock creatures, and even those annoying energy beings from the Zeta sector. Every single species had responded the same way. First came shocked silence as they absorbed the horrific reality of what they faced. Then desperate attempts to negotiate. Finally, complete surrender and acceptance of their new role as subjects of the Empire. But Earth's response was unlike anything in the Admiral's extensive military experience. Dr. Kim Ji-ho was part of Earth's hastily assembled first response team, a group of scientists, military advisors, and communications experts who had been pulled together when the alien fleet arrived. He was supposed to be analyzing the alien technology and assessing potential threats. Instead, he found himself watching what appeared to be the galaxy's most expensive home movie project. "Rate my conquest montage," he called out to his colleagues, holding up makeshift scorecards he had created from office supplies. After carefully studying the alien presentation, he announced his verdict. "I give it a 6 out of 10. Needs better. Cinematography." Commander Choi Hana, who had joined the response team from Earth's Space Defense Force, was nodding in serious agreement. She had extensive experience in military communications and propaganda analysis, which made her critique all the more devastating. "The lighting is terrible," she observed, pointing at several scenes where the dramatic effect was ruined by poor visual composition. "Very amateur hour. Did they use phone cameras for those explosion shots? And what's with the weird camera angles? It's like they've never heard of proper framing." The rest of the response team began chiming in with their own observations. Someone complained about the lack of a coherent narrative structure. Another person criticized the overuse of dramatic music, noting that it made the whole presentation feel like a bad action movie from the early 2000s. A communications specialist wondered aloud why the aliens hadn't invested in better special effects technology. Admiral Thexmore watched his tactical displays in growing bewilderment. His tentacles, which normally remained perfectly still during military operations, began twitching uncontrollably as he tried to process what was happening. The humans weren't just unafraid of his most terrifying psychological weapon. They were critiquing it like film school students, reviewing a poorly made student project. Things got worse when the humans discovered something called social media, when Earth's leadership decided to send diplomatic representatives to meet with the alien fleet. Admiral Thexmore expected something impressive. Maybe a sleek military shuttle with ceremonial guards, or at least a proper spacecraft that would show these humans understood the seriousness of their situation. What he got instead was something that made his 4 eyes blink in disbelief. The human diplomatic vessel looked like it had been built as a joke. It was clearly a converted school bus, the kind used to transport children to educational facilities. But instead of the usual yellow paint job, someone had covered it in rainbow stripes that hurt to look at. Crude rocket engines had been welded to the back, and the whole thing was held together with what appeared to be industrial tape and sheer optimism. The bus somehow managed to dock with his flagship, though the process involved several near collisions, and what sounded like someone inside yelling directions in multiple languages. When the airlock finally opened, Admiral Thexmore prepared to deliver his standard greeting to conquered species representatives. He straightened his uniform, activated his voice amplification system, and arranged his tentacles in the traditional pose of superiority. Ambassador Yang Taiho emerged from the makeshift spacecraft wearing the most casual outfit the Admiral had ever seen at a formal diplomatic meeting. His feet were clad in what humans called flip-flops, simple rubber sandals that made soft slapping sounds against the metal deck. His shirt displayed text in the human language that roughly translated to, "I survived another alien invasion. complete with a cartoon drawing of a smiling human giving a thumbs-up gesture while explosions happened in the background. The Admiral had rehearsed this moment countless times. The formal greeting was a crucial part of establishing dominance over newly conquered species. His words needed to be precise, intimidating, and absolutely clear about the power dynamics at play. "Greetings, inferior species," he began in his most commanding voice, the one that had made entire planetary governments surrender without firing a shot. "You stand before the might of the Corvanian Empire, and your world now belongs to—" "Oh, you brought snacks too," interrupted cultural attaché Song Minji, who had apparently been the second person to exit the rainbow bus. She was carrying what looked like a primitive cooling device and seemed genuinely excited about something. "That's so thoughtful. I brought kimchi and instant ramen. Have you ever tried Korean food? You're going to love it." The Admiral's carefully prepared speech about subjugation and the new order of galactic dominance died in his throat as he watched the human woman begin unpacking her cooling container right there on his command deck. She pulled out various sealed packages and containers, arranging them on a nearby tactical display console as if it were a dining table. "Want to try some while we figure out this whole space conquest thing?" she continued cheerfully, offering him something that smelled strongly of fermented vegetables. "This kimchi is my grandmother's recipe. She'd be so excited to know aliens. We're trying her cooking." Other humans began emerging from their ridiculous spacecraft, each one carrying supplies that had nothing to do with formal diplomacy. Someone brought folding chairs. Another person had a portable music player. A third human was setting up what appeared to be a small cooking device that began heating water for the instant noodles. Within minutes, Admiral Thexmore's pristine command center, the nerve center of one of the galaxy's most feared warships, had been transformed into something resembling a human recreational gathering. The tactical displays now held food containers. His officers' workstations had been converted into makeshift seating areas. Someone had even managed to find a way to dim the harsh military lighting to create what they called a more relaxed atmosphere, the SAES. Admiral stood frozen in place, his prepared conquest speech forgotten, as humans began setting up what they cheerfully referred to as a picnic in the heart of his military flagship. Deep inside the Corvanian flagship, Admiral Thexmore called an emergency meeting with his senior officers. The command room was filled with the Empire's most experienced military minds, beings who had conquered star systems and crushed rebellions across half the galaxy. But none of them had ever faced anything like the humans before. The psychological warfare manual lay open on the central table, its pages filled with detailed strategies that had worked perfectly on every other species they had encountered. Fear-based intimidation, displays of superior technology, demonstrations of overwhelming firepower. These tactics had a 100% success rate throughout Corvanian military history. "Perhaps we should demonstrate our superior firepower," suggested Commander Vothal, his voice carrying the uncertainty that was spreading through the entire fleet. "The humans clearly don't understand what our weapons can do. A show of force might help them grasp the reality of their situation." The other officers nodded in agreement. It was a logical next step. Sometimes primitive species needed to see actual destruction before they understood the futility of resistance. They would target something impressive but non-essential maybe, one of the larger asteroids in the outer system. The explosion would be visible from Earth and would surely make the humans take them seriously. Admiral Thexmore gave the order, and his weapons officers began charging the main plasma cannons. These were weapons capable of cracking moons in half, powered by the compressed energy of entire stars. The charging process created a distinctive humming sound that grew louder as the weapons reached full power and brilliant blue energy began crackling along the barrel assemblies. On Earth, the humans were watching everything through their global communication network. What the aliens didn't realize was that their surprise demonstration was being broadcast live to billions of people across the planet and throughout the solar system. Streaming personality Kang Hyunwoo had set up his equipment on the roof of his apartment building in Seoul, providing running commentary to his online audience as the alien ships prepared their weapons display. His view account had already broken several platform records, and people from around the world were tuning in to watch what he had dubbed the galaxy's most awkward first contact. "Ooh, they're charging their big boom-boom cannons," he announced, excitedly adjusting his camera to get a better view of the energy buildup on the alien ships. "Look at those pretty blue lights. Chat, what do we think? Are we scared?" His live audience was responding in real time through text messages that appeared on his screen. The responses ranged from laughing emoji to comments about the aliens' cute light show. Someone suggested they should rate the alien weapons on style points. "Let me check the poll results," Kang Hyunwoo continued, reading from his tablet where viewers were voting on their emotional response to the alien threat. 93% say mildly entertained, 4% chose slightly confused, 2% went with hungry for lunch, and 1% selected genuinely concerned, but mostly about missing their favorite TV show tonight. Meanwhile, at the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, engineer Lim Soo-hyun was watching the same broadcast while working on her doctoral research project. But instead of being entertained like most viewers, her scientific curiosity had been triggered by the alien technology display. "Actually, can we get specs on those energy weapons?" she called out to her research team, looking up from her tablet, where she had been taking notes about the alien ship configurations. "Our physics department wants to see if they're using efficient power coupling. The energy distribution pattern looks really inefficient from here." Her colleagues gathered around her workstation, and soon they were engaged in a detailed technical discussion about the aliens' weapon systems. Someone pulled up electromagnetic spectrum analysis data. Another person began calculating the probable energy output based on the visual indicators. A third researcher started sketching improved designs on a whiteboard. Within an hour, what the aliens had intended as a terrifying display of overwhelming military might had become the subject of a graduate-level engineering critique. Human scientists across the planet were analyzing the alien technology not with fear, but with the kind of professional interest usually reserved for peer review sessions at academic conferences. The aliens were beginning to realize that their terror tactics weren't just failing. They were being graded on technical merit by the very people they were trying to intimidate. When the alien fleet first appeared in Earth's solar system, every military advisor in President Han Seo-jun's cabinet expected the usual response. Deploy the Space Navy, activate planetary defense systems, mobilize ground forces, and prepare for the worst-case scenario. But President Han had been watching the public reaction to the aliens, and he realized something that his military experts had completely missed. The humans weren't afraid. They were having fun. Instead of declaring martial law or activating emergency protocols, President Han made what would later be remembered as the most unconventional military decision in human history. He picked up his phone and started making calls to people who had never been considered weapons of war: internet comedians, social media personalities, and content creators. "We're not fighting these aliens," he announced to his confused cabinet members. "We're going to entertain them to death." Within 6 hours, Earth's response was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen during a first contact situation. Instead of battleships and missiles, humans deployed something far more dangerous: their sense of humor. Variety show host John Woo-young had somehow managed to get himself and his entire production crew to the lunar surface, complete with professional lighting equipment and multiple camera angles. He stood in his signature bright suit, Earth visible behind him in the black sky, while alien warships hovered ominously in the background. "Welcome to Earth's Got Aliens," he announced with the same enthusiasm he usually reserved for celebrity talent competitions. "I'm your host, and today we're rating our new space visitors' invasion skills. Let's see what they've brought to the table." His production team had set up voting stations where humans could score the aliens on various categories: ship design, intimidation factor, dramatic timing, and overall presentation. The scoring system was the same one used for entertainment. Shows complete with colorful graphics and upbeat music. "Our first category is ship aesthetics," John Woo-young continued, gesturing toward the alien fleet with the kind of theatrical flair that made his shows so popular. "I have to say, the black and spiky look is very retro. Very evil empire from a 1980s space movie. Points for commitment to the theme, but maybe a little predictable." Meanwhile, social media influencer Oh Yonseo had started something that would change the course of galactic history. From her apartment in Busan, she launched what she called the Alien Invasion Challenge on every major social media platform. The concept was simple. Humans would recreate the aliens' most menacing poses and gestures, but make them increasingly ridiculous. She started by copying the dramatic way Admiral Thexmore had arranged his tentacles during his intimidation broadcast, but she used pool noodles and kitchen utensils to mimic the alien appendages. "Okay, space friends," she said to her camera, striking an exaggerated pose with rubber gloves taped to wooden spoons. "This is your fear me primitive beings look, right? Let me show you how to really sell the drama." The challenge exploded across human social networks faster than anyone expected. Within hours, millions of people were posting videos of themselves recreating alien poses using household items, pets, and increasingly creative props. Someone used their grandmothers. Their knitting needles. Another person enlisted their entire family to form a human version of the alien ship formation. But the real breakthrough came when the videos started spreading beyond Earth's communication networks. The hashtag #AlienInvasionFail somehow began, appearing on galactic communication channels that humans didn't even know existed. Species from across the galaxy were discovering human entertainment content for the first time, and they were fascinated by what they found. The Xentorians, normally serious species of crystal-based beings, started subscribing to human comedy channels in massive numbers. The aquatic Myrthol began creating their own versions of human memes using bioluminescent displays. Even the notoriously humorless Griselda Empire began sharing human content through their official military communication networks. Within days, human entertainment had spread throughout galactic civilization like a virus, but a good kind of virus that made everyone laugh instead of making them sick. Alien species that had never heard of Earth were suddenly learning human jokes, watching human shows, and trying to understand why these strange creatures found everything so amusing. The Corvanian Empire's carefully planned invasion had accidentally turned into the galaxy's biggest marketing campaign for human culture. Admiral Thexmore was running out of options. The humans had laughed at his intimidation displays, turned his psychological warfare into entertainment, and somehow managed to make his entire invasion fleet look like a joke to the rest of the galaxy. It was time for a real demonstration of power, something that would finally make these strange creatures understand what they were dealing with. He selected a medium-sized asteroid in the outer part of Earth's solar system, roughly the size of a small mountain. This would be perfect, big enough to create an impressive explosion that would be visible from Earth, but not so large that it would cause any actual damage to the planet. The destruction would serve as a clear warning. This is what happens to those who oppose the Corvanian Empire. The fleet's main weapons charged up with their characteristic blue glow, energy crackling along the massive gun barrels. Every system on the flagship was focused on this single shot. The asteroid appeared on their targeting screens, a lonely chunk of rock and metal tumbling through space, completely unaware that it was about to become a demonstration of alien superiority. The weapons fired simultaneously, sending concentrated beams of plasma energy across millions of kilometers of space. The asteroid didn't stand a chance. In less than 3 seconds, it went from a solid object to a cloud of glowing particles, completely vaporized by the incredible heat and energy of the alien weapons. Admiral Thexmore watched the destruction with satisfaction. Finally, the humans would understand. Finally, they would show the proper fear and respect that every other species had shown when faced with Corvanian military might. The response from Earth came quickly, but it wasn't what he expected. The humans applauded. Not the terrified, desperate clapping of a species trying to appease their conquerors, but the kind of polite, encouraging applause that adults give to children who have just performed a simple trick. "That's nice, dear," came a voice over the communication channel. It belonged to mining supervisor Bei Jion, who was currently working on a mining platform in the asteroid belt. Her tone was the same one that a patient teacher might use with a student who had just managed to solve a basic math problem. Before Admiral Thexmore could respond, he felt something that no Corvanian commander had ever experienced during a military operation. A gentle pat on his shoulder. Somehow the human woman had managed to get aboard his flagship and was now treating him like a child who needed encouragement. "We do that every Tuesday," she continued conversationally. "Want to see our highlight reel?" Without waiting for an answer, she activated a portable display device and began showing him footage that made his tentacles curl with horror. The first video showed human mining operations in the asteroid belt. Massive explosions tore chunks of rock apart, but instead of using precise energy weapons like his fleet, the humans were setting off nuclear charges, dozens of them. For what they casually referred to as routine excavation work, the next video was even worse. It showed human military forces conducting what they called weapons testing on their own planet. Nuclear explosions that dwarfed anything his fleet could produce, created not for war but simply to see how big they could make the mushroom clouds. The humans in the video were taking measurements and making notes as if this were perfectly normal scientific research. But the footage that truly broke Admiral Thexmore's understanding of reality was what the humans called extreme sports compilations. He watched in growing horror as members of this species deliberately threw themselves off cliffs, jumped out of perfectly functional aircraft, and launched themselves over dangerous obstacles at high speeds. They were doing voluntarily, for entertainment, things that would kill most Corvanian soldiers. One particularly disturbing video showed humans visiting what they called radiation zones, areas of their planet that had been contaminated by nuclear accidents. Instead of treating these locations as the deadly hazards they obviously were, the humans had turned them into tourist destinations. They were taking vacation photos in environments that would be lethal to most known species. "Your species does this for fun?" Admiral Thexmore whispered, his voice barely audible over the sound of humans laughing at footage of someone jumping into an active volcano with nothing but a heat-resistant suit. Mining supervisor Bejion nodded cheerfully. "Oh, yes, we love a good challenge. Life's too short to play it safe, you know. Though I have to say your asteroid destruction technique could use some work. Want me to show you how we do it with style?" The Admiral realized with growing dread that his most powerful weapons demonstration had been the equivalent of showing a firecracker to a species that regularly played with nuclear bombs for entertainment. Dr. Shin Dongmin had been studying the EISC, alien visitors, for 3 days, and something wasn't adding up. As Earth's leading xenobiologist, he had spent his entire career preparing for first contact with alien life. He had theories about what extraterrestrial beings might look like, how they might behave, and what kind of environments they might come from. But the Corvanians were puzzling him in ways he hadn't expected. It wasn't their appearance that confused him. Forearms and tentacles were well within the range of possibilities he had considered. It wasn't even their technology, which was impressive, but not incomprehensibly advanced. What bothered him was how delicate they seemed. Every interaction with humans appeared to stress them out in ways that didn't make sense for a species capable of interstellar conquest. The breakthrough came when he finally got access to their biometric data. The Corvanians had been surprisingly willing to share information about their physiology, probably because they assumed humans were too primitive to understand it. But as Dr. Shin reviewed their biological requirements and environmental preferences, a picture began to emerge that explained everything. "Oh wait, you're from a Class M paradise world?" he asked Admiral Thexmore during one of their increasingly frequent meetings. He was reading through data about the Corvanian home planet, and each detail made his eyebrows rise higher. Gentle weather, stable tectonics, no apex predators. The alien admiral straightened with obvious pride. This was clearly something the Corvanians considered one of their greatest achievements. "Indeed," he replied, his chest swelling. "Our world is perfectly balanced. The temperature varies by only a few degrees throughout the year. Our geological systems are completely stable. No earthquakes, no volcanic activity, no dangerous weather patterns. We eliminated all hostile life forms thousands of years ago. Corvania is a paradise of safety and predictability." Dr. Shin stared at the data readout, trying to process what he was learning. The Corvanian homeworld sounded like the kind of place humans would build as a retirement community. Perfect climate control, no natural disasters, no dangerous animals, no environmental challenges of any kind. It was the complete opposite of Earth in every possible way. Communications Director Yu Cheung had been listening to the conversation while reviewing her own files about human-alien interactions. When she heard the Corvanian description of their homeworld, she let out a soft whistle of understanding. "Oh, you sweet summer children," she whispered, but her voice carried clearly in the quiet room. The affection in her tone was the kind usually reserved for puppies or small children who didn't understand how dangerous the world could be. Admiral Thexmore's tentacles twitched with confusion. "I do not understand this reference to seasonal offspring." Dr. Shin set down his tablet and looked directly at the alien commander. What he was about to explain would change everything about how the two species understood each other. "Earth is what we call a death world," he said simply. "We evolved here. This is us being mellow." The silence that followed was the kind that happens when someone's entire understanding of reality suddenly shifts. Admiral Thexmore's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he tried to process this information. "Death world," he repeated slowly. "Everything on our planet is trying to kill us," Dr. Shin explained patiently. "The weather can freeze us solid or cook us alive. The ground shakes and splits open without warning. Mountains explode and cover everything in poisonous ash. The water can drown us, and if it doesn't, it might be full of creatures with more teeth than you have tentacles." Communications Director Yu Cheung pulled up a presentation she had been preparing for the alien visitors. "We have storms that can level entire cities, animals that hunt in packs and see us as food, microscopic organisms that can kill us from the inside, plants that are poisonous to touch, insects that inject venom, weather patterns that can shift from pleasant to deadly in minutes." As the humans explained their world, the alien crew began to understand something that changed their entire perspective on the invasion. They had come to Earth expecting to intimidate a soft, weak species with overwhelming displays of power. Instead, they had encountered beings who had spent millions of years evolving on a planet that made Corvanian military training look like a peaceful vacation. The aliens began to realize why humans found their threats amusing. They were flowers, trying to intimidate weeds, house cats attempting to terrorize wolves. Every terrifying demonstration of Corvanian might was something humans dealt with as part of their normal Tuesday routine. No wonder the humans were laughing. From their perspective, the alien invasion wasn't a cosmic threat. It was the galactic, the equivalent of being attacked by a group of very polite, very sophisticated, but ultimately harmless butterflies. While Admiral Thexmore and his senior officers were having increasingly confusing meetings with human diplomats, something far more alarming was happening throughout the rest of his fleet. The Corvanians were discovering that their technological superiority wasn't quite as superior as they had believed. Teenage hacker Moon Jinwoo was sitting in his bedroom in Seoul, surrounded by empty energy drink cans and pizza boxes, treating the alien invasion like the ultimate video game challenge. At 17 years old, he had already earned a reputation in certain internet circles for his ability to break into systems that were supposedly unhackable. When the alien fleet arrived, he saw it as the most interesting puzzle that had ever presented itself. "Okay, chat, let's see what we're working with here," he announced to his streaming audience, which had grown to over 2 million viewers since he started his Let's Hack Some Aliens broadcast. His fingers flew across multiple keyboards as lines of code scrolled down his screens at incredible speed. The first breakthrough came within 20 minutes. "Their cybersecurity is adorable," he announced, barely able to contain his laughter. "It's like they've never heard of firewalls, or passwords, or basic security. Seriously, who builds a military computer system and protects it with the digital equivalent of a screen door?" His chat exploded with comments and donations from viewers around the world who were watching him casually stroll through the aliens' most secure military networks. Someone donated $50 with the message, "Can you make their ships play music?" Another viewer asked if he could change the colors of their weapon displays. "Oh, this is interesting," Moon Jinwoo continued, digging deeper into the alien systems. Their entire command structure is connected to a single network. No compartmentalization, no backup security protocols, no isolation between critical systems. It's like they built their military computers using a tutorial from Networking for Beginners. Within an hour, he had complete access to everything from their navigation systems to their coffee makers. Yes, the aliens had coffee makers, and yes, they were connected to the same network as their weapons systems. Moon Jinwoo couldn't decide if this was the most trusting species in the galaxy or simply the most naive. Meanwhile, on the flagship itself, engineer Go Yunhyuk was having his own adventure. He had originally been part of the technical team analyzing alien technology, but his natural curiosity and complete lack of respect for authorized personnel-only signs had led him to explore areas of the ship that humans probably weren't supposed to see. What he found made his engineering heart weep. "Your life support was running at 12% efficiency," he announced to a group of startled Corvanian technicians as he emerged from an access panel with his toolkit. "No wonder you all look tired. Half your atmospheric recyclers are clogged. Your power distribution is a mess. And don't even get me started on your thermal regulation system." The aliens watched in fascination as this human who had somehow appeared in their most secure engineering sections without triggering a single alarm, began fixing problems they didn't even know they had. Go Yunhyuk moved through their systems with the confidence of someone who had spent his entire career making broken things work better. "See this coupling here," he explained to the alien engineers, pointing to a component that had been malfunctioning for months. "You're losing 30% of your power output because of a simple calibration error. And this ventilation system, it's fighting against itself. No wonder your crew quarters feel stuffy." The Corvanian technicians began following him around, like students, taking notes as he identified and fixed problem after problem. Their advanced military vessel, it turned out, had been held together by what humans would recognize as duct tape and wishful thinking. Back in Seoul, Moon Jinwoo had moved beyond simply accessing alien systems. He was now actively improving them. "I've optimized their database queries, cleaned up their code architecture, and installed some basic security protocols," he reported to his audience. "Oh, and I may have accidentally fixed a bug in their navigation system that was causing a 2-degree drift in their hyperspace calculations. They've probably been wondering why their long-distance travel takes longer than it should." The comments from his viewers were increasingly amazed. Someone asked if he was going to apply for a job with the aliens. Another person suggested he should charge them for technical support. The galaxy's most feared military force was being simultaneously hacked and home-improved by a species that found them endearing rather than threatening. The Corvanians were beginning to understand that they hadn't encountered a primitive civilization waiting to be conquered. They had stumbled across a species of natural problem solvers who saw their mighty war fleet as an interesting project that needed some TLC. Admiral Thexmore could hardly believe what his life had become. He was sitting cross-legged on the floor of his own command deck, which the humans had somehow transformed into what they called a friendship circle. The military precision of his flagship's nerve center had been replaced with colorful cushions, soft lighting, and the smell of something the humans called instant noodles. Ambassador Yang Taeho sat across from him, expertly using 2 thin sticks to eat from a steaming cup of what looked like processed food, but somehow tasted better than anything from the Corvanian military's nutrition dispensers. The ambassador was wearing his usual casual clothes and flip-flops, completely at ease in the heart of what was supposed to be one of the galaxy's most intimidating warships. "So you're not going to conquer us?" Admiral Thexmore asked, his voice carrying a note of hope that he tried to hide. The question had been bothering him for weeks. Every military protocol he had ever learned said that by now the situation should have been resolved one way or another. Either the Corvanians should have successfully conquered Earth, or the humans should have mounted some kind of resistance. Instead, they had somehow ended up in this strange middle ground where nobody seemed to be fighting anybody. Cultural Minister Park So-young, who was sitting nearby with her own cup of noodles, burst into the kind of laughter that humans seem to produce so easily. It wasn't mocking or cruel. It was the warm, genuine amusement of someone who had just heard something endearingly silly. "Why would we?" she asked, gesturing around the room where Corvanian officers and human visitors were sharing food and conversation. "You're way more fun as friends. Plus, your technology is charmingly retro. We could help you upgrade." The Admiral's tentacles curled with what he was learning to recognize as embarrassment. Over the past few weeks, humans had been pointing out problems with Corvanian technology that his own engineers had never noticed. Their weapons were inefficient, their computers were vulnerable, and their life support systems were apparently held together with what humans called hope and determination. "We have been the terror of 17 star systems," he said weakly, though even to his own ears it sounded more like a complaint than a boast. "Oh, we know," Ambassador Yang Taiho replied cheerfully. "We looked up your military record. Very impressive for a species from a paradise world. You've done amazingly well considering you're basically spacefaring gardeners." 6 months later, the transformation was complete. What had started as the most serious military invasion in Corvanian history had turned into something that nobody in the galaxy could have predicted. The Corvanian invasion fleet had been redesigned as Earth's most popular tourist attraction. Humans from across the solar system were booking trips to visit the alien ships, which had been converted into a combination museum, cultural exchange center, and entertainment complex. The weapon systems had been replaced with gift shops. The Sato interrogation chambers had become photo booths, where visitors could take pictures wearing Corvanian military uniforms. Admiral Thexmore had been promoted to Director of Interspecies Cultural Activities, a job title that didn't exist in any Corvanian military manual but somehow suited him perfectly. He spent his days giving tours to human families, explaining Corvanian history to giggling children, and trying to understand why humans found everything so amusing. The aliens were still confused about how their fearsome reputation had become an intergalactic meme, but they were starting to enjoy their new role as the galaxy's most accidentally entertaining military force. Corvanian officers, who had once been the terror of entire star systems, now wore name tags and helped human tourists take selfies in front of their former torture equipment. The change had spread beyond Earth. Other species throughout the galaxy had been watching the human response to the Corvanian invasion, and they were learning something that would reshape interstellar politics forever. Fear-based intimidation only worked on species that were capable of being intimidated. The galaxy learned an important lesson that would be taught in military academies for generations to come. Never try to intimidate a species that considers cosmic horror just another Tuesday. Some civilizations were simply too stubborn, too curious, and too friendly to be properly conquered. The Corvanian Empire's military doctrine was quietly rewritten to focus on diplomacy and cultural exchange, rather than conquest and intimidation. It turned out that making friends was not only more effective than making enemies, it was also much more fun.